A classic with enduring quality. That's what this Lancia Aurelia is. And that's what the Audrain Museum Network is as well. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you do it right now. Join the classic group. Although I find myself with this Lancia Aurelia Viotti Giardiniera at the beach, this is not a beach car. This rather is a car for the country gentleman. Now, he might have a beach estate in addition to his mountain ski lodge as well, but this is a car that would take him, his family, his friends from one spot to another in comfort, style, and with amazing elegance and mechanical refinement. This is a Lancia Aurelia B53. Lancia is a legendary name that is far too little known in America. If as an American you think of a Lancia at all, first of all, you probably don't know how it's pronounced. It would be Lancia or something like that, but Lancia, Italian for spear, is a great brand dating back to 1906. And a brand known for innovation and engineering excellence. I go pretty far back with Lancia as well. One of my great enthusiasms, of course, are Italian cars of all sorts. But I have a very special place in my heart for Lancia, mainly because the cars are so unbelievably engineered. Vincenzo Lancia, the founder of the company, was an engineer who worked at Fiat at the turn of the century when Fiat was just getting started, turn of the 20th century of course. Fiat was just getting started, did some race driving for Fiat, which also helped to influence his opinion of racing and the car business later on. But that's in the time when all manufacturers proved their cars in competition. And Vincenzo Lancia, by all accounts, was a very good race driver who won quite a few races and who had a great mechanical sensitivity for the cars he drove. And when he went out on his own in 1906 to start his company, he knew that engineering, durability, and quality were going to be the hallmarks of his cars. And some of the Lancia engineering firsts were the first semi-unitized body, or a monocoque body, on the 1922 Lancia Lambda. And now this, of course, is at a time when all manufacturers, certainly of prestige cars, sold chassis and engines only, and the bodies were done by independent coach builders. And so obviously that became a bit of an issue. If you have a car with a monocoque or semi-monocoque body, you don't have that same flexibility. And indeed, in the cars that immediately followed the Lambda, the Di Lambda and Astura, they largely went back to a body on chassis design, in large part to accommodate the clientele of an upper end car. But that didn't stop Vincenzo Lancia's company from looking at ways to continue to use stressed bodies as a part of their design philosophy. And the groundbreaking Aprilia in the late 1930s is a great example of that. After World War II, when obviously Europe was in ruins, certainly Italy was, and they needed a new model to replace the Aprilia. And that new model was the car I'm driving today, the Lancia Aurelia. Aurelia is a beautiful name, and it comes from the practice of Lancia at that time of naming their models after the great Roman roads. And the Romans were brilliant road builders. They laid a standard for roads that would not be seen again for thousands of years during the so-called Dark Ages. The art that the Romans had perfected in building roads was not forgotten, but certainly not employed because nobody had the money or the interest or the need to deploy roads the way the Romans did. And the Via Aurelia was the main road from Rome to Pisa, a very important trade route, and connecting with the Via Julia Augusta, a traveler could go from Rome on a paved road all the way to France, to Gaul. The intrepid visitor to Italy today can still make that trip on the Strada Statale 1, the Via Aurelia, which now goes from Rome to Ventimiglia at the French border on the way to Monaco. And it's a fabulous route to take. And I say all this about the name of the car because it's important that you think about these cars as vehicles of travel. These cars were designed to take people distances, and in comfort, style, and with the unmistakable quality that Lancia was known for. The other thing which is extraordinary is that when they debuted their post-war model in 1950, the Aurelia, it was not just a redesign of a pre-war car. It was something totally new and still amazingly advanced in specification by the 1960s. This car features the first production V6 engine. It has a rear transaxle, inboard rear brakes, just an extraordinary specification for a car of 1950, and very much the product of the brilliant engineer Vittorio Jano. And talk about somebody with not only a first and a second act, but probably a third and a fourth act as well. His career spanned the 1920s through the 1960s. And he started out working for Fiat, worked for Alfa Romeo, worked for Lancia, and then for Ferrari. An astonishing career, a brilliant man who was just full of great ideas and was fortunate enough for much of his career, especially that part spent at Lancia, to work for a company that really appreciated his ideas and his thinking. For the Aurelia, he was aided and abetted by the engineer Francesco Di Vigilio, who designed this amazing V6 engine. And the Aurelia, although of course not really intended to be a frontline competition car, nonetheless proved in largely stock form to be a potent car in the endurance races such as the Mille Miglia and the Carrera Panamericana, where their speed and durability can be used to utmost effect. And I mentioned before that Vincenzo Lancia had been a race car driver for Fiat, and he had decided that his company was not going to go racing. His son Gianni Lancia, however, who inherited the company after Vincenzo Lancia's death in 1937, although he didn't take over running the company until after the war because he was too young, had different ideas. So for him, racing was a key part of what he wanted to do to make sure that everybody understood what Lancia was all about. But that's another story for another time in another car. Let's get back to this car I'm driving right now. This is a 1952 Lancia Aurelia B53 Giardiniera by Viotti. Carrozzeria Viotti was a company based in Torino that was a bodybuilder that had specialized after the war in making exquisite woody cars, what we would call a woody in the States. These wonderful wooden station wagons. And they thought they'd try their hand with one of these Aurelias. Now, I did mention that Lancia was very big in unit and semi-unit bodies, and the Aurelia, the sedan and the coupe, were exactly that. However, Lancia did produce a platform for coach builders. And this is an example of one of those platforms of coach builders, the B50, B51, B52, B53. Actually, there's a couple more, but those are the only ones you need to know about. This one is a B53, so it has a slightly larger engine than the original B50, and it was designed to take any sort of bodywork. A number of coach builders in Italy built cars on the Aurelia platform, including Pininfarina, Vignale, Balbo, Bertone, and this Viotti was one of approximately 49 built, of which it is said there are only 2 extant. It's an amazing car, filled with beautiful details and incredibly elegant workmanship. Not just the wood framing on the doors, but also the incredible metalwork in the gutters and the hinges. And every part of this car just absolutely screams quality. This car at this age has no squeaks, no rattles. It's an astonishing tribute to both the engineers at Lancia as well as the coach builders at Viotti, that they could accomplish what they did with this car, and that the superb restoration has restored it to rude original health. Now, we think of Woodies as beach cars, and of course Italy has lots of beaches, but this is not a beach car. This is an estate car. You know, much as the British call what we call station wagons estate cars, and especially a shooting brake, this is sort of an estate shooting, as my Anglophilic Italian friends might say. Most at home on a wonderful country setting, a beautiful country road, and going out on a shooting party, or perhaps, as you can see on this car, on a ski trip. This is a car designed for work, but luxury work. And I have another very soft spot in my heart, not just for Lancia, because I currently own a Lancia Appia, another great example of superb engineering. But my very first Lancia, one of many that I've owned over the years, was an Aurelia, a custom-bodied Aurelia, an Aurelia B50 Vignale Coupe. One very important thing about this car I must share, and that is the fact, obviously, as you can see, it's right-hand drive and it's column shift, as was my B50 Coupe. And it is a great, probably the greatest tribute I can give to this car, the fact that Lancia was able to accomplish in 1950 a linkage from the column back to the transaxle that other manufacturers in the 1970s were still struggling with. It is absolutely amazing, and as unintuitive as it might seem to be for us Americans, driving a right-hand drive car with a left-hand column gear shift, it is as easy as pie. Quite an amazing feat. I am a committed Lancista, and since this car came into the Audrain collections, I've been eager to get behind the wheel and reacquaint myself with one of these wonderful early Aurelia coach-built cars. And I couldn't be happier.